Welcome to the Reclaim Leader podcast. I'm Jason Tucker.
And I'm Jesse Skiffington.
We're two pastors in the trenches who are passionate about church health for greater gospel impact.
We share the ups and downs of ministry, strategies that worked for us,
and some that didn't.
Best practices and practical tools for church leadership.
The goal, to help all of our churches flourish. Let's get started.
See another sunrise, sing a little song.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reclaim Leader. Jesse, it's good to see you. And that little tilted angle thing that I was doing last time didn't work because my camera's not working, and I don't really know why. But isn't that just a microcosm of leading change in a church?
It is. You got to tinker with stuff and try things and try again and all that. And anyway, so I love it though. We're doing our best, right? We're just figuring it out as we go. And today we're talking about something that I think really is, I really enjoyed our conversation with Suzanne. First of all, she's awesome and she loves Jesus. She loves the church, and that makes a huge difference when you have teammates like that. But we're going to be talking about how do we help guests feel at home in our churches, and what does that look like? And what are some steps that we can take to move in that direction of creating an environment where our guests feel like there's a place to go for information, a warm welcome, but also one that's metered out according to kind of reading their desire for a level of engagement and not our selling our church. And so it's just a lot here in our conversation that I found to be incredibly helpful as we're thinking about welcoming new people into the life of the church.
Yeah, so if you're listening in real time, we're in the middle of Lent and looking toward Easter. Now's a great time to sort of address this or to give it some thought as to how are we going to be prepared to welcome people well. I mean, that really is the first step that honestly a lot of churches miss. Not because they don't care, but they just don't have a plan. And I think being able to welcome people well is such a huge part of ministry. Jesse, I know you had some reps in youth ministry too, but we always knew that if you didn't make the kids feel welcome right away, it was really hard to get them to participate because they just didn't feel like they could. And adults are exactly the same way. Yeah,
I agree. I think one of the most powerful tools that we have available to us is meeting someone and then remembering their name the next time.
Yeah.
And that, in youth ministry and college ministry, if you met a kid and then the next time you said, "Hey, Jeff, great to see you. I'm glad you're back." Like, it just changes everything. And so I think there's a posture and orientation towards people where they carry something of that youth and college ministry need into their adult life in a little bit different way that we have to be thoughtful about. But we all kind of crave that in some way, to be seen and recognized and welcomed well and hosted well and that kind of thing. So really crucial if we want to see our churches thrive, to figure out how do we do this part of our ministry well.
Yeah, and before we get to our interview, just a reminder that we'd really appreciate if you would share this podcast with your colleagues. It's a way that we get the word out and help as many pastors and churches as we can. That really is the beating heart of what we're trying to do. We're literally, we don't have any sponsors. We're not making any money. It's just, we care about our churches and we care about all churches. We just I feel like in this culture right now, there are so many people that are hungry for Jesus. And I feel like if the churches aren't prepared to do something about it, then what are we doing? Yeah. So this is sort of like a look in the mirror kind of thing where I'm thinking about this, about my leadership, about my church all the time. Like, what are we doing to make sure we are ready, or that we are trying to actively reach those who we currently don't reach? So this is all part of that trajectory.
Yeah, really good stuff. So looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. I know you're going to get a lot out of it. And our guest from Tower Hill, the Director of Guest Services and Communications at Tower Hill, I believe, Suzanne Duffy. So glad to have Suzanne with us.
Well, I am so excited to welcome back to the podcast. I got to go back and look at when the last time you were on, Suzanne, but it has been a minute. A lot of life and ministry has happened since the last time we had you on. Suzanne Duffy is our guest services director and director of communications in the church. She is a woman of many hats. She is known as Ms. Tower Hill, and it's not like a beauty pageant. She is our host every week, pretty much every week, where she does the welcome. And so she is seen on our streaming services. And it's funny, she is what we call Peninsula famous, which is just a little joke that in this area, she goes into a store and people recognize her, and that's pretty funny. So anyway, Suzanne has been a huge part of what we've done at Tower Hill and helped to build our guest services team to what it is from scratch. And we thought we'd have her on to talk about guest services and communications and Easter. So welcome back to the podcast, Suzanne Duffy.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me back. It's been like years.
Yeah, I mean, don't be offended by that. You've been busy doing a lot of ministry, so
That's true.
Man, I just feel like this time of year and whatever's going on right now in our culture, it feels like a perfect storm that people are looking for churches. People are looking to connect. I see article after article about how Gen Z is now sort of reawakening the faith in America, and we're hearing about people showing up to church that are giving church a chance, first time, long time, or maybe first time ever. We've had a couple of those.
We have.
And I feel like so many churches, it's like, I don't know if they would know what to do if new people showed up in the sense of, do we have a plan for how we're going to welcome people well? Will they know where to go? Will they know what to do? And we spent a lot of time thinking and talking about this. And Suzanne, I thought it'd be good just to share maybe where we started and when you took over, and what were some key things to really building a guest services team? Because I know a lot of churches, they'll have a welcome committee or a hospitality committee, or maybe they'll have a couple of people, but we really built a team and it has made a huge difference. So I thought I'd just let you go for it and share for those churches who are wondering, how did a regular non-warehouse skinny jeans church do it?
And that is definitely us, where we're not that. I had been here for a while, and we had a consultant come in. And I think that anybody who was at Tower Hill at the time would think, oh, we're a friendly church. Like, we're nice to everybody. And the consultant came in and had some hidden people that came to church on different days and all. And one of their biggest feedbacks was it didn't feel welcoming and it didn't feel friendly. And we were floored. I mean, Jason, you and I both can remember that.
Our jaws hit the floor a little bit.
Completely, because we thought we were so welcoming and friendly and everybody knew each other. But that's part of the problem, is that we all knew each other and we talked to people who we knew. And that was about it. Or we might hand them a bulletin and say hi, and that was about it. And, we really started looking at, I think sometimes it's good to look at what's bad to do to figure out what's good to do. And we definitely did a lot of that. We shared our own experiences of church shopping and things we didn't like. Like, I remember there was one time when my husband and I were church shopping, and we went in somewhere and they had all the guests stand up in the middle of the service. It was mortifying. I didn't know if I liked the church. I didn't know if I liked the pastors. And here I was being made to stand up in the middle of service. And we, needless to say, never went back to that church. So it was some looking at that and saying, okay, what works, what doesn't, and what are we not doing? And the thing was really being a host. And I think that's a good way of looking at guest services. How can you host people? When somebody comes over to your house, we all have those friends that are awesome hostesses, right? That you just have a great time when you go there. You always feel loved and welcomed when you walk in. And then people who aren't all that great. So it was, what can we take from that and put into, yes, the front doors when they walk in, but then even once they're inside and seated, just to make them feel comfortable. We always say when I do training, and actually any email that I send to guest services every week, I constantly am saying and reminding them every Sunday is somebody's first Sunday. And just for them to finally get enough courage to come to church might have been a big obstacle. And so for us to make them feel welcome and wanted is the most important. Whether they come back to Tower Hill or they find another church, it doesn't matter. We want them to know that they are welcomed, because eventually, hopefully, they know that they're wanted by us, and then they'll know that they're wanted by God. So that's kind of the attitude to take on with it to begin with. And we really had to cultivate who we had at guest services. Some people are innately friendly and are good at talking to people, and some people are not. So I don't know how to say it either. But we don't just let you sign up for guest services. Like, you are invited to be on the guest services team. We have people recommend people, and then they go through a training process to really understand what we're trying to convey and the feeling that we're trying to convey.
What, Suzanne, were some kind of key things in the training? So I remember when and when that consultant came, it was about 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And I remember the way we welcomed people before was we had that rolling furniture, that rolling desk thing. You know what I mean? So it looked like a hotel desk a little bit,
Did.
or like where you do your luggage.
Uh-huh.
And somebody who was kind enough to stand there. And were they also handing out bulletins? I don't remember.
At one point they were, at another
Yeah.
point they weren't, and it was trying to be more guest servicey, but it was just like
Yeah.
a welcome team.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really, with the training, and we really wanted to go over, again, having that atmosphere of when somebody comes over to your house, but also how to just make things right. I think one scary thing for anybody that's starting on the guest services team is that they're afraid they're not going to have the answers. And if somebody asks a question, they're not going to know how to answer it. And the first thing I like to do in training is say, throw that out the window. It's okay. Your role is to be friendly and nice and welcoming. If you don't know the answers, they don't expect you to know it all. That's so, say, I'll find out, or bring over, we have a guest services desk now. So it's a permanent desk, not a rolling desk. And it's where I am most of the time, or somebody that's trained at a different level that can really answer specific questions that people might have that come in. But other than that, it's just really for them to concentrate on the friendly factor. And then we also say to them, we use the example of the Ritz-Carlton a lot, and how at the Ritz-Carlton, obviously known for being fantastic guest services, that anybody in the company down to custodians has a certain amount of money that they are allowed to spend to make a guest happy. And so they can make the decision, they can figure out how to get it right then. And I say the same to our guest services people. If you see somebody that comes in with a stroller or a wheelchair and they're not quite sure where to put it, what to do, just handle it for them, get it done, right? So get it in the right seat, make them feel okay. They can come up with that and answer it on their own. We actually had somebody first time ever coming to church a couple weeks ago who, in the course of conversation with somebody, they figured out that they didn't have a Bible. They never owned a Bible. And it was a guest services person who wasn't working guest services at the time. He was just there for service. And he was like, okay, I'm going to give you one. He took one right out of the pew and handed her a Bible and said, this is yours. Please enjoy. Please open it and read. And that was absolutely the right thing to do, and exactly the kind of thing that we want our guest services people to know that they can do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to get that, kind of the culture, and to the point where someone who's not even volunteering on a particular day is doing has those behaviors and that attitude of ownership and welcome, I think that's pretty powerful. And you're talking about creating something of a team. What does your team look like? I mean, just drill down a little bit. So is this 50 people, 20 people? How often do people serve? Like, what's kind of the ask around guest services?
Super good questions. And that definitely has changed over time. When we first started, we were small and mighty, and people had to serve quite often. We have several different positions that they serve. So we need to fill between about 4 positions for each service. Over time, the team has grown. So now we probably have about 40 active people on the guest services team. So we ask them to serve, we would say at least once a month. Now I say at least once every 2 to 3 months because we have so many people. We have some people that serve almost every single week because they just love it. And it's become part of their church experience too, which is great to have those to rely on. And of course, people go in seasons. So sometimes somebody's able to serve quite a bit and help out on the team. And then they'll go through a season where they're busy and they can't for a few months. And having a large enough team makes that okay. And then everyone knows Christmas and Easter. Please serve. That's something we talk about. It's all hands on deck. And really, we say, even if you're not technically on, you're always on. You always have that guest services hat on. That's and to reach out to the people who you don't recognize and say hello, but never say, is it your first time here? Because if it's not their first time,
ouch. Yeah. Have we met before? Yeah.
You baptized my kid. That's
yeah. You baptized.
Right.
Yeah, we just had a funeral last week. Thank you. That's fantastic. Well, and tell me the shift, because I remember how, some of these conversations early on to go to guest services. That's a very specific versus a welcome team, which is for everybody, right? New people and people that have been here forever. And we're still, I think, struggling for something of an identity with our team. Are we guest oriented? Are we everybody oriented? Is this a next steps thing? Is this a welcome thing? But how did saying guest services help shape the focus or narrow the focus for you guys?
That is a great question. We definitely still answer a lot of questions and are super welcoming to our every single Sunday people.
Mm-hmm.
But having that specific guest services, it lets folks know that's our priority.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm at the desk and an everyday Sunday attender, member of the church is asking me a question, I'm helping them sign up for something, and I see that there's a guest that's behind them waiting, I feel very comfortable saying, let me help you with that a little bit. I have a guest here. So it's easy for me to nicely dismiss the regulars, but they understand it because they know that that's what our team is for. They hear it every single Sunday in the welcome. We say, we are so, if you're a guest here, we're so excited to see you. Come see me at the guest services desk or anybody with these, and I have show and tell, handy dandy, ridiculous, bright green lanyards. So we make our team wear this. When they're officially serving. I know a lot of churches do t-shirts, and that could work for some, but my guest services people like to dress up or not dress up.
Different. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes our lanyards are left in the lanyard closet, and then how tightly do you police stuff? Like, I get it. There's like lots of layers.
Totally, exactly. But the obnoxiously bright green, as I used to call it, I've tried not to say that word anymore. But it really has helped. It's helped both the members, like I said, understand that's what we're there for, is for the people that are walking in, but it also makes it a lot easier for those people that are new to know exactly who to ask the questions for. And we have them peppered throughout the church. So there's always somebody that's at the door that's a part of guest services. So it's not a greeter, it's a guest services team member. Obviously, they're saying hi to anybody coming in, but they are specifically looking for people that are new. Immediately letting them know, hi, welcome. If you have any questions, head right over here. Oh, you have kids. Are you interested in Sunday school? Just having those conversations with them immediately as they're coming through the door. Have somebody stationed at our desk. That's where people know they can come up and ask specific questions. And it's amazing how, I'd say in the last 6 months, almost every Sunday, I have several brand new people coming up and introducing themselves to the desk. And then we have someone at the door, and then we also have somebody back in our Sunday school wing to greet all the families that are coming in there and just have conversations with them while they're kind of standing in line, checking in on the computers and getting their kids ready. There's somebody to have conversations with them and just be welcoming and greeting.
That's awesome. And now I want to pivot just a little bit and pick both your brains, because I imagine there's someone listening that's saying, you guys, sounds like you have guests every week and you really need this. How does a church that's just getting started with this, or maybe doesn't have a ton of guests coming through the doors yet, why does something like this make sense for a church like that?
I think that if you have that focus and you are ready for guests, and there's ways that you can do that outwardly, outside the doors as well, that they will come, right? We have to be prepared for when they start coming. We didn't always have brand new people. It's become that way, and we do now. But it's having that attitude of knowing you're ready for them when they do. And then it's doing things outward facing. So for example, our website, I would say 10 years ago, our website was absolutely geared for internal. It was geared for, okay, if you happen to pop on and see it, you'd learn a little bit about us, but it was geared more towards the people who are already here. Now it's the exact opposite. I would say besides our event page, everything else is really driven on somebody saying, let me check this church out. What is it about? So
sort of
that
a digital billboard for the church. Or something.
Exactly. So having all those things kind of add up. We have a banner at the bottom of our hill that we put up, and so there's no permanent signage. So we do a banner that we switch out. And the banner, sometimes they'll have an event, like if Easter's coming up or Christmas, but a lot of times it's just a general banner that is always directed to guests. So for example, the last couple of months, we've had one that said, this is the sign that you've been waiting for, or you've been looking for. And I actually had a first-time guest come the other day, and I was having a conversation with her and her family, and I said, okay, so what made you choose Tower Hill? Like, why'd you decide here? And she laughed. She goes, it was the sign at the bottom of the hill. I was sitting at the stoplight.
And I got to say, I've never seen Suzanne that happy.
So happy.
That's awesome. It paid off.
I've never seen it. All the time it takes for her
Well,
to decide.
my question was kind of a leading question, because really I think what I hear you saying is if you prepare as if guests are coming and a guest shows up and they're like, oh, you expected me to be here. And your congregation is looking at guest services and going, oh, we expect guests to be here. I guess I should be inviting guests to come and be with us. And it kind of begins to create a culture of expectation of guests, but also of we're about more than just our community. There's a mission that goes beyond that to reach people. So I think it's a great way to frame welcome in a targeted way that also sets us up for success when those people do show up.
I think what it does is it changes the mindset of a church. So if you start just thinking about welcoming people, first of all, I think what we're trying to avoid is being weird. So churches are so weird when people show up, and we've been guilty of being weird too. But it's like you have the church that our pastor Teresa always calls it the church that follows you home. And she was talking about her daughter's story of going to church. She visited church for the first time, not ours. By the time she went home, there were already cookies from the church on her front doorstep, and she was mortified. She's like, not only did you track my information, but this feels stalkerish to me. And then you have others that are like, okay, all you new people, please stand. We want to welcome you and come on up and introduce yourself. And I know the heart behind that is good, but I don't know if you've noticed, Jesse. I know you're not like this in the Pacific Northwest, but it used to be you get excited, like, I wonder who's going to drop by my house this week, and somebody drops by your house unannounced. It's, all the lights are off. You're looking at the Ring camera, like, what the heck's going on?
What are you trying to sell me? And what are you going to try and make me do? And my house isn't clean. And like at the Northwest is the ultimate garage door up, garage door down world. It is, your home is not, it's just not an option. I think for some of the older generations, it is still that way. Maybe the cookies would be a good idea for a few people that maybe you tried into church people, but for the most part, I think the younger
not our
generation,
culture.
Like, please don't show up at my house with anything.
Not our culture. So I think we're trying to, how do we welcome people well without sort of over welcoming them and scarring them or ignoring them? And because again, that whole stat, people are making up their minds if they're going to come back within the first few minutes of being on your campus. And how do we make sure they have a soft landing is really what this is all about.
And I know we wanted to get to, this is so good. We could camp out on this topic for the whole time, but we also wanted to talk a little communications and Easter, kind of looking out ahead. So what are you guys working on in that kind of area? How do you get the word out? And then how do you welcome people when they show up on Easter Sunday?
I think one of the big things is what are we offering, right? So, for example, this year we have really upped the ante on all kinds of things that we're doing during Lent, and a lot of different ways to get together and to worship or to just have small devotion time, to just have fellowship time. We have those sprinkled in there as well, and I think that is great, and it allows us the opportunity to let them know Easter services and Palm Sunday services and everything happening Holy Week, but really having more deep dives and more things for them to participate in during the Lenten season, I think has been helping a lot. We don't find that traditional advertising really does that much. We have one newspaper we'll put in sometimes that's very local to our area. It used to be that I had a lot of focus on social media, and I think a lot of people who weren't necessarily, followers of Tower Hill would see things there. I still think it's important. I don't think that's where, I don't think people are searching that as much. I think they're enjoying content, and I think it's great to have it there to let our members know. I don't know that somebody who doesn't know Tower Hill or isn't sure if they know Jesus is looking there for the authenticity and the feel. I think it's, without a question, it's our members and attenders inviting people. So we talk about that a lot. We focus on that a lot. For the big holidays like Easter, we have postcards that we make. And we say to our people, sure, you can take this and hang it on your fridge so you know what the service times are and what we're doing. But that's not the point. Take 2 or 3 and hand it to a neighbor. Hand it to somebody that you work with. Give it to a friend. Invite them. The point of this is to invite them. And it just allows us an opportunity to remind our people that's how we get people here, right? That's how we reach more people for Jesus, is for each of us to be doing the inviting. Yeah.
And I know you're dying to talk about it anyway, Suzanne. The table behind you. And yes, you could say the phrase. She loves calling it what?
I love calling it church merch.
Church merch. I banned her from saying that but
We call it, so rightfully so, Jason likes for it to be called outreach gear. And that is good. Church merch just sounds cute.
Church
And I
merch is better. I got to overrule Jason on this one.
it's cute, like, right? But I get what he's saying. The point is, and we tell people this, like, I have new t-shirts. These were cute, but we have new ones that are coming in the next couple of days. I'm very excited about. But we'll, again, in the welcome, and let people who are at Tower Hill know, yes, we have all these great fun little things that you can wear. The point of them is to start those conversations with people outside of Tower Hill. And this one does say, I love my church, but a lot of them we actually don't even necessarily put church on it. We just put Tower Hill, and work on cool designs that people would really wear when they are walking the dog or go to the beach or whatever they're doing. And it allows for conversations. Hey, cool shirt. What's Tower Hill? Well, let me tell you, it's my church, right?
Yeah.
So it is
For the record, we are not making a dime. If anything, we're losing money. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if people get in their heads like, "Oh, is this like a money maker?" No.
Yeah. Well, I think the merch piece kind of, maybe that's where your discomfort is. But I like that. I like the idea. It's both, right? It's. I'm proud of my church, but I'm also, this is an outreach opportunity. So it's like that. It says something about the culture. If someone's wearing your church's T-shirt, they're like, "I'm loving my church. I love this place.
I love
my
it.
trucker hat." How come I don't have a Tower Hill trucker hat? Are you going to bring one to Florida in a couple of weeks?
I can bring you one.
Thank you. I need one.
You need one.
Yeah.
But so, and this is an example. It doesn't even say Tower Hill.
That's right. And then when I meet people from, Red Bank area on my travels, I can say, hey, they'll be like, what does that TH mean? I'm like, it's Tower Hill.
Tower Hill. Yeah. Exactly.
I do think it's funny that the initials of Tower Hill Church are THC, which may go over well where you are. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
probably would. Yeah.
Have you ever seen that John Crist bit he does, church or marijuana
Weed
dispensary?
Store?
You ever seen? Okay, it's very funny.
It's very
you
funny.
Have to guess
There's a lot of them.
We try to focus on our actual ministry and work here, and I don't know, you guys have way too much fun, I think, is what that means.
You gotta have fun.
I love it. That's super cool.
But I think all of this is related, right? It's your church deciding we're going to be geared toward those who are outside of our walls. We want to welcome them. We want to make them feel a part of things.
Yep.
And we try to equip and encourage our congregation. I mean, that's really where it happens.
Yeah.
And everybody that's coming in that's new, I don't know, Suzanne, there aren't many that I haven't met that weren't like, oh, I heard about this church from my friend on the soccer team, or I heard someone's been trying to invite me for years and I decided to finally show up, or it's the people inviting people out in the community. And so this whole, the conversation starter with the church merch and the postcard about when it all works together.
Sure.
I do want to ask you, Suzanne, I know we're sort of going back to the first part of the conversation, but let's say somebody has, like we had like 3 or 4 people maybe in the beginning that we thought were good. What were some of the key things that you were trying to get them to do that was a shift from what it was?
Actively look for and engage new people.
Yeah.
Where instead, before it was just saying hi to everybody. Now we really are actively looking for people that we don't know. And sometimes it might be somebody who's been here a few times. We are a bigger church. So, but having those conversations and doing more than just saying hi. Right. But then also, and part of this goes to, it has to be a personality for somebody. Also being able to read the room in a way and understand some of those people want you to say hi and they want to be left alone. And others want to engage in conversation and talk more about it. Some of them come in and walk right up to the guest services desk first time and want to ask me a lot of questions, very specific about this church, what we do, what do we study, what do we believe, and some of them don't even know who Jesus is. So it's having people who can read another person, and I think a lot of times that's just a personality trait. So it's getting those right people who understand how to have those conversations and read the room correctly.
Yeah. So where to push in for more, get to the second and third question. And other times just let them be, kind of say, hey, we're glad you're here. But they want to be anonymous in the back this time or something like that. So, yeah. So you got to be discerning in that too. And, one of the shifts that we made was to purposely put people who are not here yet into the room with us. Not like go find someone and drag them in, but say, who's representing the voice of the people who aren't here yet? In other words, who's going to kind of think in terms of their experience and what's going to be like for them, and what are they hoping for and looking for, what are their fears, and those things. And sometimes I think as churches we forget about that person, and so we think of each other's experiences, we think of how do we serve each other and connect each other and those things, and sort of assume some things about any guests that show up. So we just kind of on purpose set that person as a presence in our community. And so I even have a sign in the hallway of our office, and it drives my staff nuts, I'm sure, but who's representing the voice of the people who aren't here yet? It's sort of
That's
on
great.
purpose, like in their terms. And that's what guest services is. It's thinking in terms of the people who are going to come that aren't here yet. So I love the thinking and the strategy. And actually I was taking some notes. It just reminds me we need to double down on getting our act together. Our merch is not as good. It was on track. And then so our trucker hat needs some work is what it comes down.
I'll send you some websites.
Yeah.
Suzanne, what, just kind of as we're finishing up our time, and thank you again for being on. What are some things that we should have asked you? What's something that
I have some things. Okay, so. If I was thinking, just as we're talking, a few things that I think is important, and talking about, thinking about those people that I love that you bring the outside people in and think about it that way. For example, on our website, as I said, we've kind of changed that to really be outward facing. Mm-hmm. We have a whole FAQ section that we sat around and said, okay, if we're going to a church for the first time, what would we want to know? And it's actually a little like tongue in cheek, kind of funny, very lighthearted, but it tells them like, what do you wear? What do I do with my kids? What if my kid screams? Mm-hmm. All kinds of things like that. What's the parking situation? We kind of really thought about everything through the whole, any question they might have. And answer them cute and funny, but truthful. So I think that's important. That tells them, again, you're expecting a guest, but you're letting them know what we're like, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's amazing that we have online worship. So 99.9% of the time, people who come have watched a service online first, which is great. I know not every church can do that, but it was a way to let people kind of sneak peek in the front door before mm-hmm. coming. Yeah. So they know what the people look like. They know what they're wearing. It sounds silly, but hey, I know that I have to think about what I'm wearing every time. So we worry about things like that. So just ways to make them more comfortable. Yeah. And I think the other thing we really do as well is we incorporate talking about guests throughout the service, but not in the weird way of, like we said, stand up and say hi. But we do it several times, definitely, like I said, during the welcome, letting them know who to go up to for questions. But then we have a prayer time in most services. And Jason will say, if you've never been with us before, here's how we do it. So it's, again, making them comfortable while also reminding our members that, and attenders, invite guests, invite people. So it's really sprinkled throughout the service. So it just becomes part of the culture of Tower Hill. And that's helped a lot. Yeah,
that's super cool.
Awesome. Well, Suzanne, thanks again. And listen, you're the queen of church merch, and the Miss Tower Hill. People have called her that, by the way, and her husband.
Who's more recognizable out in the community? Do you think?
It's Suzanne for sure.
Yeah. So
it's close.
Well, it's close. It is pretty fun. Like it definitely. It's like I think half of them think I'm a pastor. I'm like, oh, definitely not. I do not have that training. I do love Jesus, so that part counts. And I love a microphone and saying hi and welcoming. And I think having somebody do the welcome, and that's actually another note. We don't call it announcements, which I remember when we first started doing this, and it was Jason that really said, it's not an announcement, it's a welcome. And so even writing those and what we say each week, it's keeping in mind that this is to welcome people. Yes, we're going to tell them a thing or two that's going on, but the whole point of this is to welcome people, right? So it gives us all that attitude and mindset.
Awesome. Well, keep up the good work. I think, Jason's sermons are fine, but the welcome is what makes the difference. I mean, it
kind of does.
It kind of does, right? So it sets the sermon up for success. It sets the children's ministry up for success. It makes everything kind of go when people walk in and feeling like they're immediately they can be at home and belong in whatever way is best for them. And so then it makes smooth sailing for the other parts, and maybe even overcome some of the other stuff that might be hard for them in a church service. So awesome job. Keep up the good work. And thank you for sharing. I mean, there's a lot of good wisdom in there. So I was taking some notes, and my team is going to regret this interview because now they're going to have to come back to
Sorry.
it.
Oh, real quick. So speaking of that, if anybody wants to reach out to you and has questions, what's a good way for them to do that?
Absolutely. They can shoot me an email. So it's Suzanne, SUZANNE, that's 2 N's, at towerhillchurch.org. And happy to answer any questions, share any information. We just want to help every church be able to do amazing things like this and reach more people for Jesus.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Suzanne.
Bye.
Jason, so much fun to have Suzanne with us, and just grateful that she took the time to share from her experience. And obviously, as she's thinking about guest services, it just comes pouring out, and it's like her passion, and she loves it. And just even that example of the sign down the hill that invites people in, it's such good stuff. And so as I'm thinking about my takeaway from our conversation, I'm like, what's one of the things that Suzanne talked about that I could work on with our team to help us in some way around our welcome of guests? And the merch thing really is like, I'm like, we have some of that stuff, but we kind of do it anecdotally and a little haphazardly. And we've got some pens and some mugs, and every so often we'll have shirts and things. But I love that was so sharp, that tower of stuff, tower of merch at Tower Hill. I mean, that's pretty cool.
When we first started doing it, we did have a couple of people talk about, Jesus overturning the money changers tables, but. Right. But I think it's because they didn't understand what we were doing. It does sound very transactional, but the point is missional. It's meant to, how do we create conversations around the church in our communities?
Yeah, and a lot of times when we do that kind of stuff, it's suggested donation sort of approach that's like, hey, we're trying to do some fun things here and be a community together. So take a shirt. If you can pitch in $10 to help cover the cost, awesome. It's that kind of approach. But
and I think people want to have fun.
Yeah. Totally. We did sunglasses that it just said Summer of Fun on the side, and it was about getting together and being in community, and it said MVSOF on the other side. And people were like, what does that even mean? It's like, well, our church likes to have fun, and we do cool things together over the summertime. So everybody got shades. It's like I still have some of those in my drawer at home. So it is about having fun, and guests, I think, are responsive to that. They go, oh, this is a community that enjoys each other's company, that is also glad I'm here. So anyway, the merch thing, maybe that's an easy one to point to, but that's just one for me. I'm going to revisit this with my team, see what we can come up with.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think for me, I just always go back to, I'm thinking about that church that is thinking, hey, we really need to get something going, and what do we do? Just because I remember when we were that church and we didn't know what steps to take or what to do. I remember I found online, and I don't even remember where I found it. It was some mega church had a training they were doing for their guest services people, and I just swiped it.
Yeah.
And had our folks watch it. And then we talked about it. What are some things we want to make sure we do and don't do? And again, Suzanne was like, patient zero. I mean, she was the one who was really interested, and we immediately put her in a leadership role.
Awesome.
And she found, I think, 2 or 3 other people that everybody knew them as like friendly, outgoing people. And that's where we started. It wasn't, but the thing is, these things get a life of their own, because what happens is guest services becomes a place that you can plug in new people as volunteers. It's one of the few places in the church where it's okay. You don't have to know a lot. You're just really welcoming. And sometimes those people that are new to your church are the most excited to welcome others.
That's absolutely right. So you could kind of capitalize in a good way on their enthusiasm for, hey, this is a great community. I found it. You're going to love it too. So I think that's right. And pointing back to is it Horst Schulze? Is that the guy from
Ritz-Carlton?
The Ritz-Carlton. And I remember us sitting in that room listening to him talk about the janitor having an ability to write a $2,000 check to make somebody's guest experience what it needed to be. I'm like, that's a crazy amount of ownership.
Yeah.
And yet it creates this culture of everybody wanting to create the best experience for those that are coming. And so we can learn from that and apply it in the church in our approach to hospitality of our guests. So I love it. So even like our team, I was just thinking, one of our practices shifted from pointing down the hall to where the thing is to walking with someone down the hall getting to know them a little bit as you walk them to the nursery or to the children's environment or to the coffee or whatever. And just some of those little things that communicate, we're glad you're here, and sort of that genuineness about it. So lots of good things to consider.
I love it. All right, everyone. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Hope this helps. Hope it's helping you as you're thinking about life and church and Easter. And as we always say, ministry is hard. It is so much better when we do it together.